Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jonathan Millard. I'm a museum educator at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. So glad to have you all joining me today. So thank you for joining us again for another Intrepid adventure. So these programs are free, but if you would like to support us in delivering this content, please click on the link in the description. So today, what we have for you, we will be discussing African Americans in the Navy. So we will start discussing stories from Intrepid, and we'll also hear stories of African American men and women who were the first to achieve different honors, but certainly not the last. So let's talk a little bit about the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. Many of you may be familiar with this already, but for our new friends, just want to provide some background. Okay, so the Intrepid Museum is currently located on Pier 86, West 46th and 12th Avenue in Manhattan. But if you look at these pictures today, right now, you'll see that there was a time where the ship was sailing around the world. So Intrepid served for 31 years. It was created to participate, and the first war that it was involved with was World War II. So it was actually started to be built on December 1st, 1941. Just 6 days later, the Imperial Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So the United States said, hey, let's get this ship ready very quickly so we can participate in the Pacific War against Imperial Japan. So after World War II, Intrepid was then involved in the Cold War and the Vietnam War. So Intrepid service spans those times. So we'll talk a little bit about African Americans in the Navy during those times, but we're also going to branch out a little bit as well to highlight some major milestones that happened after that and some milestones that happened before that as well. So I want to share some images that were both taken around World War II. And what's interesting about this is that what we see on Intrepid is indicative of what we will see in the United States during this time. So if we're talking about World War II, what we're going to see in the United States is that the United States was segregated at this time. So we're going to see that reflected on the ship as well. And opportunities for African Americans were limited in the United States at this time. They were also limited on ships like Intrepid. So African Americans serving in the Navy did not have as many opportunities to be captains or commanders or pilots in the same sense as other counterparts. But instead, a lot of them were given messmen positions, so working as cooks or stewards mates or serving officers, and a lot of roles related to cleaning or serving others. So there was a limited opportunity there, but depending on what ship you were on, different captains and commanders could give its crew a little bit more leeway. For example, Intrepid had one gun tub that was manned predominantly by African American gunners. This gun tub was called Gun Tub 10, and these men were trained by a Mexican American by the name of Alfonso Chavarias. So this crew of Gun Tub 10, there was a very interesting story that took place in October 1944. This was actually Intrepid's first experience against a Japanese kamikaze attack. So on this day, October 29th, 1944, there were 16 men serving in this gun tub, and they noticed an aircraft was getting closer and closer to Intrepid. So they're noticing that this is happening, and they start firing on this aircraft. So the thing about anti-aircraft weaponry on a ship is the main goal is it's pretty difficult to shoot down an enemy aircraft coming towards you. But the goal is to keep these aircraft away, because if you're getting fired at, generally you do not want that to happen. You're going to try moving away from that gunfire. But in the case of these kamikaze aircraft, that was not a deterrent force. So they were still moving towards Intrepid. And the crew of this gun tub kept firing at this plane as it kept getting closer and closer and closer to Intrepid. It was aiming for a vital part of the ship. The goal of this aircraft was to sink Intrepid. But the men in this gun tub kept firing, and they hit the wing of this aircraft, and the wing was sheared off of that aircraft and actually went straight into that gun tub. Because this happened, that aircraft did not end up hitting a vital part of the ship, But unfortunately, because that wing went straight into the gun tub, 10 lives were lost and 6 men were injured. So for an act of heroism like this, the Navy generally awards something to honor the sacrifices that these men have made. And on Intrepid, there was a ceremony to give these 6 surviving gun tub members, they were promised the Navy Cross, which is one of the highest awards that you could receive in the Navy. So this ceremony took place, but then someone in the Navy during this time found out that these men received this award and actually asked these men to return their Navy Cross and instead get a lesser award, a Bronze Star. And so this took place in 1944, where these men were asked to return this award and get a lesser award in return. So one of these crew members, his name is Alonzo Swan, he saw that this was unjust and actually took the Navy to court and fought against that Navy until 1993. 1993, so almost 50 years, when he finally received the Navy Cross in a ceremony that actually took place at the Intrepid Museum. So we're going to hear a few stories similar to this in that there's a lot of persistence as a common theme. There's some things that are unjust that are taking place, but you're seeing these African-American men and women rising to the occasion, showing that they're heroes and proving that they deserve to be in these positions, right? So I want to share with you a few firsts. In addition to the story we just heard about the members in the gun tub of Gun Tub 10, I want to share some firsts at different points in Intrepid's history and some different points around that as well. All right, so I want to start off with Harriet Ida Pickens and Frances Wills. So we were discussing World War II. And around World War II, there is a giant demand for manpower, right? Because so many people are asked to fight overseas. All right, so the Navy is asking more people to serve that they traditionally did not ask to serve, or if they did serve in the past, and when it was in times of peace, they did not have them generally serving. So that is the case for African-American men, but also women and African-American women as well. So if we look at this poster, this first image here, this is a poster for recruitment into the military for women specifically. And the Navy's version of this were waves, okay? So the women accepted for volunteer emergency service. So on July 30th, 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Public Law 689, creating the Women's Reserve as an integral part of the Navy. Okay, so while this was the start of waves, keep in mind women have historically been involved in supporting war efforts with yeomen in World War II and thousands of women serving as volunteering as nurses, even during the Civil War and Revolutionary War, right? So this isn't necessarily new to have women serving in the military, but we see there's often a common theme in these times of war where the United States is asking women to have a larger role. So on October 19, 1944, the Navy announced that African Americans and Blacks would be admitted into the Women's Naval Reserve. Okay, so what's interesting about this, in World War II, there were over 85,000 waves, so women accepted for volunteer emergency service, and about 72 of them were African American. So what we're seeing here for Harriet Ida Pickens and Frances Wills, these are going to be the first 2 female African American officers in waves that we see here. And Harriet Ida Pickens and Frances Wills, they had a lot of great skills that made them great for this role, right? So Harriet Ida Pickens, she was previously a supervisor of a large-scale recreation program. So her role in the waves became organizing and administering physical examinations and training to enlisted waves. And then Frances Wills had a background as a social worker. So her work involved her looking over job training and selection for enlisted waves. So the reason why these opportunities even became available was because there were people in the United States wanting to have more opportunities. They saw that there's this big demand for manpower, but if you're asking us to serve, we also want to have ability to serve in different capacities. So we're going to see this with the waves, where we have Harriet Ida Pickens and Frances Wills and those African-American women joining the waves. We're also going to see this in officers in World War II as well. So in January 1944, there were nearly 100,000 Black sailors in the United States Navy. So 100,000 Black sailors, but none of them were officers. So officers are people that have that additional training. They're overseeing other enlisted sailors, but this opportunity was not available. It started in January 1944. So those same efforts that led to Harriet Pickens and Frances Wills being admitted into waves, alongside some pressure from Eleanor Roosevelt, led to a group of 16 Black enlisted men assembling at the Recruit Training Center in Great Lakes, Illinois, for officer training. So there's 16 of these gentlemen. You might notice there are 13 listed here. So the normal officer training course is 16 weeks. These 16 men were expected to complete it in just 8 weeks. So very expedited, but have like the same amount of work and things expected of them. So the Navy expected, especially with this 8-week version of this course, expected at least a 25% attrition rate. So that is the rate similar to white officer candidates. So if you have a certain amount, that means some people will not pass that course and end up being officers. But this group of 16, they were determined not to fail. So imagine all that pressure, knowing that there are 100,000 enlisted sailors in the Navy. Only 16 are getting this opportunity. They want to show that, yes, we deserve to be here. We want to kind of prove our worth in that way. So lights out would go off at 10:30 p.m. Each night, but this group would like place blankets over the windows, study by flashlight, and try to keep each other on task and ready for what's to come. So when the course was over, all 16 of them passed their exams. So their marks were so high that some people in Washington were actually worried. They were like, these people must have cheated if their scores are so great. So they were even asked to take the test again. And they took that test again, and they scored even higher. So they had an average grade about 3.89 out of 4. So this is the highest average out of any class in Navy history at that time. So it's really impressive what these men were able to do. But despite the fact that all 16 have passed this course, because the Navy had this idea of there was this 25% attrition rate, the Navy still wished to only have 12 officers, or 75% of the officers passed that course. So 12 were selected, but a 13th was made Chief Warrant Officer. So that is how we got the nickname, the Golden 13. So Chief Warrant Officers are similar to officers, but they just have more roles or more expertise in a specific field. And it's beyond that of like a petty officer. So I just want to share the names of the Golden 13 very quickly. So we have Jesse Walter Arbor, Philip G. Barnes, Dalton L. Bow, Sr., George Clinton Cooper, Reginald E. Goodwin, James E. Hare, Charles Bird Lear, Graham E. Martin, Dennis Denmark Nelson, John W. Reagan, Frank E. Sublett Jr., and William Sylvester White. So in World War II, there were only 64 African Americans received commissions as officers or warrant officers. So, but this is a start, right? And we're going to see throughout history more African Americans having this opportunity to become officers and excel. And we're going to see that with some of the other men and women that I share stories about in a bit. So here we have Chief William Goines, and what we're seeing here, his first is that he's actually the first Black Navy SEAL. Okay, so if you're not familiar, the Navy SEAL, the SEAL part stands for Sea, Air, and Land. So this is the Navy's Special Operations Force. They're an amphibious unit. So they are involved with all different types of special operations. That could be offensive action, counterterrorism, sabotage and demolition, or hostage rescue. Just want to make a note about the Navy SEALs is that a woman has not yet been a Navy SEAL, but a woman recently passed in 2021 their training course to become a Navy SEAL. So just something to keep in mind. So Navy SEALs were formally founded in 1962 under President Kennedy, but their roots can be traced to World War II. So there was another amphibious unit nicknamed Frogmen. All right, so there was an African American by the name of Fred Tiz Morrison that did serve as a frogman as part of an underwater demolitions team. So that's kind of like the precursor to today's Navy SEALs. But now retired Master Chief William Goines, he graduated from the underwater demolition team training in 1956 and was serving as a frogman in 1962. So as part of those precursors, and then he was assigned to SEAL Team 2, making him the first African American to serve under this newly created designation. So he served all over the world, including a stint in Cuba during the missile crisis, and he did 3 combat tours in Vietnam as well. And so he then spent time on the early version of the Navy's parachute team, but unfortunately he was injured in a jump and retired in 1967. So he went on to serve as a school police chief and then worked with the Navy to actually help recruit young men for SEAL training and increase diversity in the teams. So kind of keeping that legacy moving forward. So I do want to move into the next section where we're going to talk about distinguished sailors and aviators receiving specific awards from the Navy. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions regarding anything we talked about? Okay, so I'm seeing a question. What happened to the 3 sailors who did not become officers as part of the Golden 13? So unfortunately, those 3 sailors, their names were, Augustus Alves, J.B. Pinckney, and Lewis Mummy Williams. And they did complete their training, but they were asked to return to their enlisted ranks. Yeah. Sorry about that. I had a phone call. Oh, yeah. So someone asked another question. Why are they called frogmen? So this is because it's an amphibious nature. All right. So they are frogmen just because frogs are amphibious. They are also a little bit amphibious. Thanks for those questions. I'm going to look up before I see another. Oh, so okay. So someone asked an interesting question. Was that the case of the plane that hit the Intrepid into the lower level and caused the fire? So that took place for Intrepid's second and third attacks by kamikaze aircraft. So the first attack was on October 29th, 1944. The second and third attacks took place on November 25th, 1944. So Gun Tub 10 was still being repaired at that point. But there were other anti-aircraft gunners firing at those aircraft coming towards the ship. Great questions. Okay, so I'm going to move over to this next section here. And I already mentioned the Navy Cross, but here we're looking at some other awards which we'll mention. So we have the Medal of Honor, this first award that we see here, the Navy Cross and the Distinguished Cross. Feel free, just take a guess which one is the highest honor out of these 3. All are great honors to have, but one is considered slightly higher above. If anyone knows, you can mention that in the chat. Mention it to anyone that might be near you. And if you were to say A, Medal of Honor, you would be correct, right? So the Medal of Honor is one of the highest, or it's the highest and most prestigious military decoration that's awarded to recognize American soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen, anyone that's distinguished themselves by acts of valor. But I want to share a story related to this gentleman here, Robert Augustus Sweeney. And we just looked at 3 different awards. Hope you remember which award that this is that we're looking at here. This is the Medal of Honor that Robert Augustus Sweeney. And keep in mind the 2 Medals of Honor that we see depicted here, because Robert Augustus Sweeney is a recipient of 2 Medals of Honor. So he is the first African American, actually, and only. So he is one of only 19 servicemen and only African American to receive the Medal of Honor twice. And what's interesting about this, both were during peacetime actions. So this actually took place. His first award was received in October 1881. So sometime before Intrepid was built. All right. So he was working on the USS Kearsarge in October 1881, and he assisted in saving from a drowning shipmate who had fallen overboard into a very strongly running tide. But Sweeney happened to be a very strong swimmer. He went in, and he was able to bring his fellow shipmate back on board. So he received his first Medal of Honor for this action. But then in December 1883, he was serving on a wooden-hulled screw gunboat, the USS Yantic, and it was docked at the Navy Yard in Brooklyn, so Brooklyn Navy Yard. And a boy on another docked ship actually fell overboard, prompting Sweeney to perform another rescue. So 2 times he was able, and during peacetime, where he saved the lives of other people, and he received the Medal of Honor for this action. And here we're seeing an image of someone that many of us may be familiar with. So many of us may have heard the story of Doris or Doris Miller, who on December 7, 1941, so again, 6 days after Intrepid started to be built, operated a machine gun during the chaos of the attack on Pearl Harbor. So he operated this machine gun and assisted the seriously wounded, including the captain, Mervyn Benyon. And the thing about this is, again, the roles that Black and African American sailors had were limited. So he was a mess attendant. So that means currently that's what is considered like a steward's mate today. So he's like serving other people, cleaning after other people, serving food and cleaning. Again, half of all Black sailors in World War II were serving as cooks, mess attendants, and stewards. So for him to go above and beyond and protect the captain, protect other ships from being attacked is really stands out. And for this, he is the first African American to be awarded the Navy Cross for his heroism. So this image that we're looking at here shows Mess Attendant Second Class Doris Miller just after being presented with the Navy Cross by Admiral Nimitz on board Enterprise in 1942. So we mentioned another award as well, and this aviator, so we're looking at, he is not on a ship, he's actually in an aircraft, received a Flying Cross and some other awards as well. So this is America's first Black combat naval aviator, Jesse L. Brown. So he actually joined the Naval Reserve to help pay for college. And he saw a poster recruiting students for a new naval aviation program. He said, oh, I want to have this opportunity. I want to be able to be a pilot as well. But he was actually discouraged from applying and was told that he would never make it to the cockpit of a Navy aircraft. But the thing about this, he persisted. And he kept trying. And eventually he was permitted to take the qualification test. And he wrote to a childhood friend that he made it through 5 hours of written tests, followed by oral tests and a very rigorous physical exam. And he made it through every single round of these eliminations with flying colors. He was a prime candidate. So he passed. He passed all these exams and eventually received orders to selective flight training in Glenview, Illinois. So in March 1947, So in March 1947, later in 1948, he completed his naval flight training, and then at the age of 22, and then he became the first African American to complete Navy flight training. So he actually ended up in Life magazine as well for this. So during the Korean War, he was flying a Vought Corsair, F-4 Corsair, but unfortunately, he was killed in action on December 4th, 1950. So posthumously, he received the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, and the Purple Heart for his actions. And so we heard a little bit about a Medal of Honor recipient, a Navy Cross recipient, and now we're hearing about a Distinguished Flying Cross, and Air Medal, and Purple Heart recipient here. I'm just going to pause for any questions we might have. Okay, so someone asked a question, where did Doris Miller go after Pearl Harbor? So he continued to serve. He went on a tour of the country for a bit, but after that he continued to serve, and he served on a ship called the USS Lincoln Bay, I believe, and this ship was an escort carrier. So it was like a converted commercial vessel turned into a carrier that could have some aircraft landing on top. And unfortunately, he was lost at sea because that ship was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine in 1943. And unfortunately, he was lost. But again, this story of him receiving this Navy Cross, his actions at Pearl Harbor, inspired several people to enlist, to serve, and again, his legacy lives on. We're going to talk about that in a bit as well. Any other questions? Okay, so someone asked a question, was Jesse L. Brown part of the Tuskegee Airmen? We saw that he was a pilot. So the Tuskegee Airmen were not Navy pilots. They were actually part of the Army Air Corps. So that is the precursor to the United States Air Force. So they were trained in Alabama and at the Tuskegee Army Airfield. That's kind of how they got their name. And they flew in over Europe and over North Africa as well. And they have so many awards that they received. I think 150 Distinguished Flying Crosses between all of them. And they also encouraged eventual integration of the U.S. Armed Forces too. Right. So I'm just going to move on to discuss the ranks and different ranks and how different African-American men and women have moved up the ranks. So here, before go into that, a little quiz for you. We see captain, admiral, and commanders. There are a lot of different terms that we see in the Navy. My question for you, which of these is the highest rank and which of these is the lowest rank? You can share that with someone that might be near you. You can write it in the chat. Which one do you think might be the highest rank here? Which one might be the lowest rank? All right, so a lot of different terms that we have here. But the lowest rank actually that we're seeing here is of the commander. Okay, so the commander is someone that is commanding a frigate, destroyer, submarine, an aviation squadron. So there they can serve as staff ashore, or they can serve on a larger vessel. But they can be, when they're on a ship, some people might actually refer to them as a captain, but they're in fact a commander. A captain is actually higher above that. So a captain is a senior most commissioned officer rank. It's lower than a flag officer, so lower than an admiral. An equivalent rank is a colonel in the United States Army, Air Force, Space Force, or Marine Corps. So then we have the admiral. So that's a rank of a general in other uniformed services. So it's one of the highest achievable commissioned officer ranks in the Navy. So yeah, I'm seeing people share. Very nice, Vash. All right. Okay. So I'm moving on to highlight this gentleman here. So this is Samuel Lee Gravely. He's actually the first African American in the U.S. Navy to serve aboard a fighting ship as an officer. So he became an officer just 8 months after the Golden 13. So he's one of those 64 or so officers we mentioned. But he was actually the first to command, first African American to command a Navy ship, the first African American to be a fleet commander, and the first to become a flag officer, eventually retiring as a vice admiral in the Navy. So very impressive track record there. So his milestone was followed by Admiral Paul Reason, who became the first African-American 4-star admiral. So with his appointment as commander-in-chief of the Atlantic Fleet in November 1996. So 4 stars, the highest amount, like one of the highest rankings you can receive as an admiral. So what's interesting about Joseph Paul Reason is that he was actually rejected from the Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps in 1957. Despite the fact that he ranked second out of 300 applicants. But he later applied to the U.S. Naval Academy, and then he got in. And then earlier in his career, he also commanded the Kuntz, the nuclear destroyer Bainbridge, cruiser destroyer Group 1, and the naval surface forces of the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. So very, very wide-spanning career and things that he was in charge of. So now I want to bring up Michelle Howard. So Michelle Howard in 1998 became the first Black woman to command a Navy ship. So she assumed command of Rushmore, and at this point, that was the first time an African American woman had command of a ship like this. But keep in mind that women were not allowed to even serve on combat ships in the Navy until early 1990s. All right, so in 2006, she became the first female graduate of the United States Naval Academy. She also, with the intention of becoming a flag officer, she also became the first female 4-star admiral to command operational forces. So in 2014, Howard became vice chief of naval operations. So this makes her, during this time, the second highest ranking officer in the Navy. And at that time, she was the highest ranked woman in the military as a whole. So definitely impressive what we're hearing of people able to move up the ranks. And again, as we're seeing this, like, imagine how inspiring it is to know that you have this chance. If you're seeing someone breaking that barrier in front of you, saying, okay, if this person can do it, I can also do this too. All right, I'm going to now discuss some legacies these people have left behind. Okay, so we mentioned earlier Jessie L. Brown and Doris Miller. So here I want to share with you the USS Jessie L. Brown, which was a Knox-class frigate of the United States Navy. And she was named after Jessie L. Brown, who spoke earlier about. He's the first African-American naval aviator in the U.S. Navy. So this ship was eventually decommissioned. But again, that legacy still lives on. And then I also want to share with you 2 ships named after Doris Miller. So the first ship, the USS Miller, which was originally a Knox-class destroyer, escort in the United States Navy, was transferred to Turkey in 1999. And then later she was actually sunk in a naval exercise. But what's exciting is that the USS Doris Miller is going to be a future Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carrier of the United States Navy. So this is scheduled to be laid down in January 2026, launch October 2029, and it's going to be commissioned in 2032. And it's it's definitely an honor to have an aircraft carrier named after you. So speaking on the Golden 13, so in 1987, the United States Navy reunited the 7 living members of the Golden 13, and they actually dedicated a building in their honor at Great Lakes Naval Recruit Training Command, Illinois. So this is actually where the Golden 13 went through their training. So today, Building 1405 where recruits first arrive for basic training, is named the Golden 13 in honor of them. And also a memorial for World War II is in North Chicago, honoring the Golden 13 and Doris Miller as well. So here we're seeing this image of Michelle Howard meeting U.S. Navy sailors aboard the USS Fort McHenry in July 2009. So again, being able to meet these people that blaze a trail, right, that actually opened opportunities for other people, I'm sure it's very, very inspiring. So I want to end what we've been discussing with a quote from Michelle Howard. So by taking the time to educate ourselves on our history and the people who shaped this nation, we can more fully appreciate the ideals set down by the founders. It's a reminder that our work is to sustain freedom and ensure that rights and liberty belong to all our citizens. So with that, that is the end of our program. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just going to take a look. I think I saw a question pop up. Someone was asking, what happens when someone receives a Medal of Honor? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So Tom asked, what happened to a sailor? What happens to a sailor after earning a Medal of Honor? So each Medal of Honor recipient has their name entered on the Medal of Honor roll and is certified to the United States Department of Veteran Affairs as entitled to receive like a monthly pension in addition to any military pensions or other benefits. So they're entitled to special transportation, get an increase in retirement pay, and they're also eligible to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery as well. Just looking if there's anything else. All right. So if not, thank you so much. And I also want to share with you, if you are interested in attending more of these programs, we have 2 more Intrepid adventures coming up. So on February 10th and February 17th, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please check our schedule to learn more about the topics of those events. We also have in very, very soon, starting on February 19th, ending on February 26th, we have our Kids Week celebration. So there's going to be several live demonstrations, really interesting talks, a lot of great partners that are going to be at Intrepid, and there's going to be activities for the whole family as well. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day, and thank you. Signing off.